Greetings. My name is Leslie Swartz from the Boston Children's Museum, and I want to welcome you to Native Voices New England Tribal Families. Boston Children's Museum is over 100 years old. From about the 1930s to the 1960s, we used some of our Native American collections to have a little exhibit area called the Indian Room. Horrifying now with our contemporary understanding of things, but at the time it was the Indian Room. It was kind of all Native American communities mushed together in a kind of frozen, extinct past. Members of the Boston Indian Council very patiently visited us and told us that what we were doing was really not accurate in any way, shape, and form, and that they would be willing to work with us to make an exhibit that would be more reflective of the realities, particularly in the Northeast. That resulted in an exhibit called We're Still Here, which focused primarily on Wampanoag and other of the New England communities. What we learned was that the most important ingredient in an exhibit about Native Americans is that it offers a way for Native communities to work with us to tell their own story in their own words, and that reflects their own values. We're Still Here was a very popular exhibit and lasted for a very long time. When we renovated our building, we embarked on the development of a new exhibit, Native Voices, which you see here. If there's one thing you learn from this exhibit is how important it is to work in partnership with the indigenous communities in your area. It makes all the difference, both to the museum and to the communities. It's a richer story with many perspectives, all of which need to be heard. Good luck. Have a great time.
Askwikwasin, Natasuis Loren Spears, ni Narragansett. Hi, I'm Loren Spears and I'm Narragansett, and I served as one of the advisors on the Native Voices exhibit here at Boston Children's Museum. It showcases 5 New England Native communities and the 4 seasons. There are the Narragansett from Rhode Island, the Wampanoag people of both Aquinnah and Mashpee, as well as the Passamaquoddy and Penobscot of Maine. Over here, you can look at children playing in each of those communities, showcasing one of the 4 seasons. Each tribe embraces each season of the year, but for this exhibit, each community is spotlighting one particular season: spring, summer, winter, or fall. Behind me, you can learn how to say hello in many of the different languages as people from those 5 communities greet you. Follow me into the Native Voices exhibit and let's learn a little bit more about each community and the season that they're representing. It is very important for exhibits of this nature to have an advisory council of Native Voices. In your own home community, you could create a Native advisory if you don't already have one, as you're reaching out and building relationships with the Native community around you. Kanupiam at Sequan, welcome to spring, and the Nuitawan School, located on the Narragansett Historic Territories in Rhode Island. Nuitawan School integrates all things required for students growing up in the 21st century, but allows them to look at it through the lens of Native history, culture, the arts, environmental studies, and traditional ways of scientific thinking. So in the springtime at Nuitawan School, we would explore vernal pools. Our ancestors utilized these vernal pools for many things, and so our students were learning about the significance historically, but also what's going on scientifically today. In the lower part of the exhibit, you can actually explore a vernal pool. And if you push the buttons, you can hear the animals speak, and the cards give you images of those animals and of those eggs so that you can identify them in the vernal pool. You can flip up those question squares and find out what plant life is around a vernal pool, including fiddlehead ferns. Next to this exhibit, there's a small display of artifacts from the Boston Children's Museum collections. Your museum can utilize your own personal collection, or you can use your partner organizations and tribes that may have beautiful pieces to share for your public. Along with learning a little bit about the people through these mini bios, we also learn about the students at Nui-Tuan School and how they connect to their history. So at Nui-Tuan School, students learn the Narragansett language through greetings and songs and books. But they also learned how to count in Narragansett, and through this exhibit you can learn how to count as well. Along with that, you can learn about each of the students. You can learn a little bit about Ridge and Delos and Winter. And they, through these phones, tell you about themselves as students in the 21st century, the things that they like and the things that connect them to their culture and their community. And so you get to know that not only do they go to the annual August meeting powwow, but they also ride dirt bikes or skateboard. And so they may have interests that connect to you. Along with that, at the school, they learned about many different traditional art forms. You can try to weave your own basket using this wonderful model and go over under, but the goal is to try to be able to make sure these apples don't fall through. And what happens is if you don't make the weave close enough or tight enough, your apples will slide right through. And so it tells you about how it's so difficult to make this beautiful historic Narragansett basket that's from the early 20th century, and how difficult it is to actually weave. On this activity, you can try to put the designs together based on what you see. After learning about this historic basket and the stamped designs, you can come over here and you can learn how the Narragansett students learned how to collect the materials to create their own ash splint basket. They would get to the forest and collect the ash and or other wood materials, and it has to be processed over time to be dry, and then they learn how to split the splints and create the pieces that they need to weave a basket together. And there's an example here that I made so that you could see a modern basket. And also, you can actually see in the panel pictures the process I took to make this particular basket. Welcome to summer and our spotlight community, the Mashpee Wampanoag. Here, they are spotlighting one of the most fun activities of summer, quahogging, and the community is out gathering things for their feast, which we call today a clam bake. Down below, you see a young girl quahogging or clamming, and you can try your hand at it. And underneath each of these flaps are facts and images that you can learn about sea creatures such as an oyster. Along the way, you can layer these materials, corn and potatoes from our gardens, along with lobsters and crabs and clams, and layer them to create your own clam bake. Our ancestors and communities today still continue this practice of creating a clam bake and harvesting the gifts from the ocean. Here, you can use this flip book to watch and see exactly how a clam bake is done, and you can try to replicate that in our clam bake pit. Down below, you'll notice these beautiful pots, clay pots from the Wampanoag community, and they are similar to historic pots, but they are made by Native people. And for your staff's understanding, we want to make sure that they don't use the word replica, because replica implies that they're not real. And if indigenous people are making these pots, they are real indigenous pots. They're just modern or contemporary. And if they are made by non-native people, then you can use the word replica. So you can explore the stones and the shells and the layers of the sand as you're creating your clam bake. But our ancestors also knew that you use as much of the resources as you can, and you only gather what you need. And so as there became leftovers, if you will, the shells, our ancestors found that it was wonderful to create art with it. And so even today, our artists of the 21st century create these beautiful works of art using this quahog shell, and we now call this art skill wampum. And so the wampum work is done by many Wampanoag artists and other southern New England tribal communities. And you can explore this wampum studio and be an artist yourself and create jewelry. On this flip book, you can see how the jewelry and wampum pieces are made. And here you can design your own beads. Along the way, you can actually create your own necklace design. And artists are creating beautiful works of art out of the quahog shell and making sure that we're being thankful for all the gifts of the season of summer. Your guests can connect both the Wampanoag exhibit and the Powwow exhibit here while they're enjoying their clambake. So each powwow, especially in southern New England or in New England, they also include the clambake. And many of our visitors to powwows from across the nation and sometimes even into Canada, as is this Mi'kmaq person here, Don Bonnaby, who's sharing. You can read about him and his enjoyment of powwow. So powwow, for you to know, is a term that actually is misunderstood. Initially, powwow, or the word powwow, which is an Algonquian word that both the Narragansett and Wampanoag languages stem from, along with about 30 others, means the medicine person or the spiritual leader who was actually leading the ceremonies. And during colonial time periods, they misunderstood when everyone was saying powwow, 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 and they called it the event. And somehow or another that managed to stick. And not only did it stick in Algonquian-speaking communities, but across the nation of indigenous people. And so now this event where people gather to have music, dance, storytelling, vendors that are selling their artworks, and food vendors that are selling their foods, where you can try not only a clam bake, but you can have frog legs, or you can have salmon, or how about some snapping turtle stew, all of which you can try if you're adventurous. And for those of you that maybe aren't so adventurous, you could have hot wings or French fries, any other sort of casual American fare. But most people like to go to a powwow to sample some new food, explore a new culture, and talk with Native people. So come with me and let's learn what a powwow is all about. And next summer, on the 4th of July, if you're down on Cape Cod, you can actually go to the Mashpee Wampanoag powwow, or in August, you can go to the oldest recorded Native gathering down in Charlestown, Rhode Island on the Narragansett Reservation. So let's check it out. There are many gatherings that powwows originally stem from, our traditional 13 Thanksgivings, but today many of these are open to the public. And so people come together and you will witness competition dancing, ceremonial dancing, and things that people, if you want to educate the public about powwow, is they need to be listening, because there are times when things can't be recorded, and that's ceremonial times. And sometimes they pop up in the middle of the event unexpectedly if something happens, such as an eagle feather falling, which represents a fallen warrior, and there's a whole ceremony of veterans, Native veterans, that come in and do this ceremony. So you need to be aware of these things. In the exhibit, probably the most difficult thing is to know what to do if people start to do a stereotypical type dance here. And what I would recommend is for people to, look at the film and to be referencing that and saying that these are very specific dances, just like anything else. If you do ballet or you do tap, that if you don't understand it, you might just do some movement that you think represents it, and it really doesn't. So you might encourage them not to do that. However, they might really enjoy looking at the film screen and seeing the different style dances and the different styles of clothing. This is the 21st century, so you'll notice that as you look at the imagery here, that some people have on what you might consider more traditional style clothing, and others that are wearing fabric clothes that are definitely different than the average American is wearing on the street today. So you know it's different, but it's still made with mainstream or modern materials. And often those are referred to as fancy dance clothes. So fancy shawl dance or men's fancy. And there are categories of dance that are traditional, And there are categories of dance that are more contemporary, and we call those fancy categories. And at the powwow, you get to learn about each of these because there's an MC or a person that stands up there and tells you about each style of dance and what dance is happening. For the museums, Boston Children's Museum also created a stereotypes sheet so that if there's some things that people are really not understanding, you can share with the parents to take that home and they can peruse it while their children are playing. Also, there's who made it. You can turn this wheel and you can find out who the artist is of each of these items that are on the display case here so that you could feel like what it would be like if you were at a powwow and actually talking to the artist and seeing their work and purchasing baskets or moccasins or a flute or a t-shirt. And in many cases, the artists design t-shirts to sell to the public. I always loved the powwows, and I always loved having a few dollars in my pocket to buy some things. Along with the art vendors, there's also the food vendors that I referenced earlier. Along the way, you might notice that behind each vendor stand, there's often what we call an RV today, but we used to call it a camper, or a Winnie wagon. And so that's a little mobile home that you can take with you, along with tents and weetus or longhouses, and sometimes an occasional teepee, even if it's not from this area, might show up at a powwow. So folks would come to the powwow days before it actually begins and set up their vendor area or their campsite. And you could go into their, if you could go into their camper, you'd see lots of different things. And the fun part of this exhibit is you get to see the intersection of the 21st century and campers and RVs and traditional ways of knowing. And so inside here, you can learn about special clothing that Native people are wearing. And so you have inside this closet, you have a ribbon shirt. So in the modern world, lots of people, women and men, will wear what we call a ribbon shirt. And it's called that because literally there's applique sewed on ribbons that hang from the shirt. It's often a calico print material, which is like a flower. Sometimes they're flowers, sometimes they're little animals. My son had one that was little deer on it. And you wear that sort of as a modern day representation of who you are. Sometimes people don't want to go shirtless, so a ribbon shirt is a nice way to do that. If you're not going to wear full leathers, traditional clothing out of deerskin or whatever other animal hide. Along with that, you have traditional clothing hanging in the closet, and my favorite, the beaded jean jacket. It's a lot of fun. You can open the drawers and see different things that people are wearing and the intersection of modern day and our culture. Kanupiam Taquanik, welcome to fall, and we are visiting the Aquinnah Wampanoag, which is they live on the island that most of you know of as Martha's Vineyard, but to them, the Aquinnah people, Aquinnah. So here they have some really unique features, as all southern New England tribes have similarities, but there are also distinct differences based on their location. And you see the beauty of these cliffs that are also known as the Aquinnah Cliffs. You have this wonderful pottery and artwork that's created from this clay. And over here you can explore the making of a clay pot through this flip book, and you can see what the dried clay looks like in these various colors, as well as look at the pounded clay that is turned into powder. It's so fun because you can look at it under the magnifying glass. And so these pots or pieces of pottery, whether it's a necklace or a canoe or actual vessels, are just showing and spotlighting the beauty of the Aquinnah clay. But I want you to remember that the Mashpee clay pots that we were looking at earlier, the resource is different, and so the clay looks different. And so when we look at indigenous people, we have to remember the landscape that they're from. And so in this whole exhibit, as we're spotlighting each community, we're also spotlighting the environment that they're in. Because it is fall, we are looking at harvests in the fall. And communities from southern New England almost all have a cranberry Thanksgiving or a cranberry harvest. And here you get to experience being down in the bog and seeing the plants and feeling what bog material feels like. And while you're down there, you can explore the animals that might venture into the bog, whether that be the red-tailed hawk or the deer or tiny little copper bog insects. So here at the cranberries, you can see what the natural environment looks like, which is very different than when you see commercial images on TV. And we wanted you to see what that is like. Each of our communities celebrate each season and the gifts from each landscape that that season provides. And so now I'm going to tell you about how you can learn more about the Aquinnah Wampanoag people at the Vanderhoop Homestead and the Aquinnah Cultural Center. At the Aquinnah Cultural Center, with my good friend Linda Coombs, who is an educator for many, many a year, sharing her culture and history, you can learn about the Aquinnah people from long ago right through today. On this screen, you can meet some of the Aquinnah people and learn about their history through these lovely captions and photographs. Here's an old-fashioned tool for harvesting cranberries. And over here, my favorite part, you can learn what a potlatch is and have your own potluck dinner. And when you put these discs onto this plate, it tells you about the potluck and the foods that you're attempting to eat. And of course, cranberries and turkey and other traditional foods that we often think of as the fall harvest are the foods that are represented here, along with succotash and cornmeal cakes and many other delicious foods that are coming from the bounty of the harvest in this early fall season. The Passamaquoddy people originally were in parts of what we call Maine today and into Canada. Today, their reservation or tribal lands are over 140,000 acres of land in Maine. And in that area, they are harvesting the resources and utilizing the materials to create things that are part of their lifeways. So here we're showing a birch bark canoe of the Passamaquoddy people, and they are great canoe makers today. Lots of artisans that are still making canoes, and the resources to make them are very difficult to harvest unless you're in deep woodland areas of New England and even into Canada. So over here you can look at the process that it takes through this flip book on making a birch bark canoe, everything from the harvesting to the finalizing. And you also can look at the materials up close. As we go across this area, you might notice that there's a living room set up here. And this is because winter is for storytelling. Across all indigenous communities, they have this tradition of storytelling. It's a time for being together with your family, you're inside, you're able to spend time sharing stories and the history, but also teaching your young people through those stories. While in this exhibit, you can choose one of the 3 stories to hear from a traditional storyteller from the Passamaquoddy community, or you can look over here and enjoy stories from indigenous authors from around the country. And along with that, you can look at the beauty of the birch bark work that the Passamaquoddy people do. And they're very, very known for the etching that they have. And if you notice, the imagery is very much related to the environment that they're from and shows ducks and woodland flowers. And you have everything from stackable containers to this lovely toy plane to this beautiful birch bark cradle board. So over here, while you're inside for the winter, you also want to be inside cooking things. And in Mary's Kitchen, you can learn about the Passamaquoddy people and explore their recipes for corn soup and try your hand at cooking and checking out what ingredients they have in their refrigerator, such as moose meat. But also on the refrigerator, you might notice that there are cartoons. In Native homes, they often have a sense of humor about the difficulties that we've taken and dealt with through colonization. And these are really opportunities for you to have conversations with your adult guests that come to the museum about that history and that impact. Welcome to Indian Island, the lands of the Penobscot people, as we continue to explore winter and the season and the work of winter and the fun of winter. And so the Penobscot people, as with all the people that we've referenced, utilize the landscape, the waters and the land. And in this backdrop here, they spotlight their sacred mountain and the Penobscot River, named after the people. And so the Penobscot people have a history in this place exploring these lands and these resources. While doing so in the wintertime, there's things that they're doing for work and things that they're doing for fun. And so the Penobscot people are ice fishing, which might be considered some work. As with all tribal communities that had winter type homelands, they would ice fish on a wonderful place, a pond or lake, and also have some fun tobogganing. And today we love an old-fashioned toboggan, but often it's forgotten that it comes from the indigenous people. While you're tobogganing, you can actually see children from the Penobscot Nation tobogganing. And while you're thinking about the fun and the work of winter, you might notice that there's this lovely mat that has all these tracks on it. So the children may try to guess what kinds of tracks are making these markings in the snow. And after they've guessed, they can go over here and they can open up these flaps and find out which animal it is, because the tracks that match the animal are underneath the flaps. There's also a lovely mammal tracking book that you can explore other tracks that might not have been in this space. And for lots of fun, you can try these modern day snowshoes. But snowshoes are original from indigenous people, and they would make them. And the Penobscot people are very known woodworkers. So not only did they do root clubs and other kinds of tools out of wood, make snowshoes, and of course this lovely toboggan, they also did fun activities for the snow. And one of them is known as snow snake. Along with the Penobscot people, all winter-going people of the northern region played this game. And it's a lot of fun, shuttling the snow snake down the shuttle, and the one that goes the farthest wins. You may have noticed as we explored these 5 different communities that there were overlap between the things that you saw, whether that was basket making or pottery or weavings or carving or canoe making, all of these things based on the ecosystem that we live in. And these 5 communities are all from New England, but yet they have different resources based on their location and the natural world around them. And so you may have to explain to your visitors the things that connect to each other and overlap, and things that are completely different for each home community.